The Grand Conclave Hall descended into further chaos as a junior communications technician burst through the ceremonial doors, a breach of protocol so severe that several of the more tradition-bound representatives emitted distress pheromones that set environmental filters working overtime. High Council, the technician's voice trembled. We've intercepted a direct transmission from the human flagship. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, all languages, all channels simultaneously. Ambassador Zixthar's skin darkened to a sickly ochre. Put it through. The chamber's holographic array shimmered, resolving into the image of a human female. Her appearance was unremarkable by conclave standards, bipedal, symmetrical, with only the standard number of visible sensory organs. Yet something about her calm demeanor sent ripples of unease through the assembly. Most disturbing was the clearly visible pattern of healed burned tissue covering one side of her face, damage that any spacefaring civilization could have repaired without trace. She had deliberately kept her scars. "I am Admiral Helena Winters of the United Earth Defense Force," she began, her voice translated flawlessly into 3,000 different communication formats simultaneously. 35 years ago, your civilizations attempted to exterminate mine. I lost my family, my home, and 17 million of my species in your unprovoked attack. The Admiral's eyes seemed to meet those of every being in the chamber simultaneously. You have spent those years believing us safely contained behind your blockade, while we have spent those years studying you, learning your languages, understanding your cultures, mastering your technologies. She gestured slightly, and the display split to show real-time footage of human vessels in key strategic positions throughout all 7 galaxies, positions that should have been impossible to reach without detection. Your diplomatic and military intelligence indicates that we are a vengeful species, Winters continued, her scarred face unmoving. Your psychological models suggest we would seek retribution for your attempted genocide. Your strategic projections recommend immediate military action to contain us once more before we can fully deploy. The Admiral leaned slightly forward, her voice dropping to a tone that translators rendered as intimate, almost gentle. Your intelligence is flawed. We are not here for vengeance. A visible wave of nervous confusion rippled through the chamber as incompatible species tried to process this statement simultaneously. In precisely 72 standard hours, a diplomatic vessel will dock at Nexus Station. I will personally lead a delegation to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence and eventual integration. If this delegation is harmed or our vessel fired upon, you will not receive a second communication before our response. She straightened, her posture shifting subtly to something that made several predatory species in the chamber instinctively lower their gaze. Prepare your diplomats, not your warships, though it makes little difference to us. The transmission ended, leaving the Grand Conclave in stunned silence before erupting into the loudest uproar in its 7-million-year history. In the private chamber reserved for the Conclave's inner circle, the 7 most powerful beings in known space watched the replay of Admiral Winters' message with growing alarm. "How?" whispered the unified mind of the Silicon Collective. How did they bypass the blockade? How are they broadcasting in all languages simultaneously? How did they position ships throughout our territory without detection? The ancient representative of the Muth Archives, silent for centuries in most deliberations, stirred within its containment field. Perhaps, its thought patterns translated, we should be asking a different question entirely. "What question?" demanded Zixthar. "Why?" the ancient being replied, "is a species with the capability to destroy us instead offering to talk." Ileana's escape route through the Archive's maintenance tunnels felt increasingly claustrophobic as security drones swept the adjoining corridors. The data crystal containing the classified files pressed against her ribs from its hiding place in her inner pocket, irrefutable evidence of the Conclave's deception and attempted genocide. Her neural implant pinged softly. Proximity alert. 2 Kulari security officers approached from the eastern junction, their methane-breathing apparatuses hissing in the recycled air. She ducked into a recessed alcove and activated her adaptive camouflage, a prototype reverse-engineered from captured hegemony technology. As the officers passed, their conversation filtered through her translator. "Don't understand why we're on high alert. They're just humans. Clearly, you weren't there during the first conflict. My spawning parent was deployed to their world. Only one in their squadron returned. Propaganda. Their technology was primitive. Their technology, yes. Their adaptability. Their sheer stubborn refusal to follow predictable behavioral patterns. Like nothing we've encountered." Their voices faded as they moved beyond range. Ileana exhaled slowly, her heartbeat gradually returning to normal. She had 18 minutes to reach the surface transport hub before the Archive's day cycle ended and automatic lockdown engage. The journey back to her quarters beneath the sprawling human diplomatic compound on New Beijing proved uneventful, almost disappointingly so after her infiltration of the most secure data repository in 7 galaxies. She secured her tiny apartment, activated the suite of countermeasures that masked her activities from Conclave surveillance, and finally connected the data crystal to her isolated terminal. The files unfolded in holograms around her: tactical assessments, species profiles, casualty projections, the complete record of the Conclave's decision to eliminate humanity. What had been abstract knowledge now became visceral reality as she viewed footage of the initial strikes against Earth cities. Tokyo, Sydney, Lagos, Cairo, places she knew only from historical archives, reduced to ash in methodical bombardment from orbit. She forced herself to watch, to bear witness to her species' darkest hours. Then came the counterattacks. Grainy footage from alien combat recorders showed human forces, hopelessly outmatched technologically, implementing tactics that made no sense until they suddenly, devastatingly did. Soldiers from countries that had been enemies days before fighting with seamless coordination. Civilian ships converted to military use in ways their designers never intended. Captured alien technology repurposed with bewildering speed. But the most revealing files were the psychological assessments compiled after the failed invasion. Thousands of interrogation records and behavioral analyses of human prisoners, combat footage, and intercepted communications, all compiled into a composite model of human psychology that clearly terrified the Conclave analysts. Subject species demonstrates cognitive dissonance at levels previously thought incompatible with sapient function, noted one bewildered synopsychologist. They express genuine distress at enemy casualties, while simultaneously planning operations that maximize those same casualties. They create art and music celebrating peace while demonstrating unprecedented skill at warfare. They form emotional attachments to clearly non-sapient robotics, then repurpose those same designs for combat without apparent conflict. The conclusion of the analysis made Ileana pause the recording. Most concerning is the species' capacity for conditional forgiveness, a concept requiring significant explanation as it lacks parallels in most Conclave members' cognitive frameworks. Humans appear capable of inflicting maximum damage upon enemies when threatened, then offering reconciliation once threat is neutralized. This behavioral sequence follows no established evolutionary logic and renders standard deterrence protocols potentially ineffective. A different analyst had appended, in simple terms, they can destroy you utterly, then help you rebuild, without perceiving contradiction between these actions. Ileana sat back, the implications crystallizing. The Conclave wasn't just afraid of human vengeance. They were terrified of human forgiveness, because forgiveness implied a level of control over aggression that their species had never evolved. It meant humans could choose mercy or destruction based on complex ethical frameworks rather than instinctual responses. And nothing frightened the ordered minds of the Conclave more than unpredictability backed by power. The Reconciliation's docking clamps engaged with Nexus Station amid tense silence. Through the command deck's viewport, Admiral Winters observed the Conclave defense fleet maintaining their ineffective formation, a standard containment pattern that would have been impressive against most species, but merely quaint against humanity's current capabilities. Final security sweep complete, reported her XO, Commander Takashi. The reception committee includes representatives from 14 species, heavily armed but within diplomatic protocol limits. And the non-protocol surveillance? Winters asked, adjusting her formal uniform. The dark blue fabric, trimmed with gold insignia representing Earth's United Nations, had been designed specifically for this moment. 17 different scanning technologies detected, ma'am. 5 are attempting to penetrate our hull. Countermeasures engage. Winters nodded, remembering the briefing from Earth Intelligence. The Conclave would attempt to assess human technology levels, weapons capabilities, and biological vulnerabilities, all while pretending to welcome them diplomatically. Dr. Mehta, she called to the communications specialist, status on their translation matrices. The linguist looked up from his console with a thin smile. They're attempting to recalibrate their systems to better understand our emotional patterns. I've introduced subtle inconsistencies in our syntax, nothing that impedes communication, but enough to frustrate their psychological profiling algorithms. Good. Let's keep them guessing. Winters turned to her team. 12 humans chosen to represent Earth's diplomatic mission. Scientists, soldiers, and diplomats who had all lost something in the original attack, yet had voted for peaceful resolution over military response. Remember your training, she said, her voice steady. They'll try to separate us, to find inconsistencies in our accounts or positions. They fundamentally cannot understand that we might genuinely want peace after what they did. That incomprehension is our greatest advantage. The airlock cycled open, revealing the cavernous diplomatic reception chamber of Nexus Station. The space had been designed to accommodate species ranging from microscopic crystalline swarms to massive methane brothers, with modular gravity plates and atmospheric barriers creating a patchwork of habitable zones. The human delegation stepped forward in perfect unison, a choreographed display that their intelligence suggested would register as both impressive and subtly threatening to most conclave species. The reception committee waited at a carefully calculated distance, neither too close to suggest familiarity, nor too far to indicate open hostility. At their center stood a towering blue-scaled Eurythie, her ceremonial armor displaying rank markings that even human intelligence hadn't fully decoded. Admiral Winters, the Eurythie's translator, rendered her subharmonic speech with surprising accuracy. I am Grand Marshal Ketval of the Eurythie Confederation. On behalf of the species who oppose the containment action against your world, I welcome you to Nexus Station. Winters registered the carefully phrased greeting, not welcoming humanity on behalf of the Conclave, but specifically on behalf of those who had opposed the genocide attempt. A political statement disguised as formality. Thank you, Grand Marshal, Winters replied evenly. Earth acknowledges your historical position. A ripple of electromagnetic signals, the equivalent of murmurs, passed through the assembled representatives. Humans shouldn't have had access to voting records from 35 years ago. Yet another indication of how deeply they had penetrated conclave security. Ketval's massive head inclined slightly. We have prepared private chambers for preliminary discussions regarding alliance structure and mutual defense agreements against those species foe. That won't be necessary, Winters interrupted, causing several translation devices to stutter at the breach of protocol. Earth's terms will be presented to the full conclave. All species together, all at once. The Grand Marshal's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of surprise. Admiral, there are factions within the conclave who would prefer to see your species contained rather than integrated. A more gradual approach with selective alliances would ensure your security. Winters smiled thinly. With respect, Marshal, our security is not a concern. As if on cue, the station's emergency communication systems activated. Reports flooded in from monitoring posts throughout 7 galaxies. Human vessels declocking near jump gates, communication hubs, and military installations. No hostile actions, no weapons fired. Just sudden, overwhelming presence where none had been detected before. The message required no translation. The Grand Chamber's chaos continued for nearly an hour before the Conclave's automated protocols activated sound-dampening fields. Species incapable of producing audible speech were finding their electromagnetic, pheromonal, and radiative communications overwhelmed by the cacophony of their vocal counterparts. Admiral Winters stood motionless at the speaker's dais throughout the uproar, her scared face impassive. She had been briefed on this exact reaction. The psychological models developed by Earth's sinologists had predicted an 87% probability of this outcome with a 4% margin of error. When order finally restored, the Silicon Prime of the Phyrexian Imperium dominated the speaking coup, his crystalline form pulsing with aggressive energy patterns that human sensors classified as rage spectrum emissions. These terms are deception. The translation matrix rendered his electromagnetic bursts. Integration means infiltration. Exchange means theft. Partnership means subversion. This species attacks us with words now instead of weapons. Admiral Winters' response was measured, her voice calibrated to Project Calm Authority. The Phyrexian Imperium voted unanimously for Earth's extermination 35 years ago. Your species contributed 67 vessels to the attack fleet. 29 returned. The crystalline being vibrated at a frequency that human intelligence identified as threat display. Are you threatening us with what happened to our ships, human? I'm providing context for your perspective, Silicon Prime. Your objection is noted and understood. The exchange, broadcast across all 7 galaxies on conclave channels, continued the carefully orchestrated human strategy. Each accusation met with calm acknowledgement rather than defensive justification. Each threat responded to with historical context rather than counter-threat. From the elevated observation platform reserved for non-voting witnesses, archivist Ileana Chen watched the proceedings with professional detachment. Her neural implant recorded every nuance of the historic session while simultaneously analyzing the reactions of hundreds of species. The most interesting responses came from the ancient Muth. Their translucent bodies, normally maintaining the still dignity that came from millions of years of evolved philosophical detachment, showed signs of agitation. The circular rings that marked their lifespans, each representing thousands of years of continuous memory, pulsed with colors that her xenobiology training identified as profound cognitive dissonance. She wasn't surprised. The Muth archives contained the complete recorded history of every known intelligent species. Their understanding of behavioral patterns was unmatched in known space. Yet here they witnessed something their vast archives couldn't contextualize. A species responding to attempted annihilation with an offer of partnership. When the High Speaker of the Photonic Alliance addressed the chamber, the energy patterns of their light-based form shifted to frequencies indicating deep uncertainty. Admiral Winters, your proposal suggests technology exchange programs including defensive systems. Are we to understand that humans would share military technology with the same species that attempted to destroy Earth? With appropriate safeguards, yes, Winters replied. This defies rational analysis. The light being's patterns translated. Our models indicate a 99.8% probability that a species subjected to extinction would, upon achieving superior technology, either withdraw completely from contact or attempt reciprocal extermination. Winters allowed herself the smallest smile. Your models were designed to predict the behavior of conclave species, not humans. In the conclave's inner circle chamber, the 7 most powerful beings in known space watched with growing alarm as human diplomatic strategy systematically dismantled centuries of established protocol. They're exposing every fault line in our political structure, observed the Cultural Analysis Prime. Every ancient grievance, every power imbalance, every ethical compromise, all laid bare simply by offering peace where we expected vengeance. The Unified Intelligence Director's gelatinous form rippled with distress patterns. The question remains, why? What do they gain from integration rather than domination? The eldest Circle member, who had witnessed 17 species rise to spacefaring status and eventually join the conclave, expressed the thought they all avoided. Perhaps they simply don't think like us at all. The emergency medical bay of Nexus Station had never been designed to treat humans. Medtechs from 7 different species worked frantically to adapt their equipment as Admiral Winter's life signs fluctuated. The nanite attack had been partially contained by her personal shields, but enough of the microscopic killers had penetrated to begin breaking down tissue at the molecular level. Dr. Leo Goldstein, the delegation's chief medical officer, pushed aside an insectoid technician whose manipulator appendages were too large for the delicate work. "Move. Your field stabilizers are calibrated for exoskeletal life forms," she snapped, injecting the counteragent directly into the Admiral's carotid artery. The silvery fluid, developed specifically to combat conclave weaponry, spread visibly under Winter's skin. In the adjacent chamber, the Conclave Security Directorate had established a crisis command center. Representatives from 30 species argued vehemently about jurisdiction, investigation protocols, and response measures. The attack had violated centuries of diplomatic sanctuary traditions and threatened to unravel the fragile negotiations. "The human vessels are maintaining position," reported a nervous Fulleri analyst, methane bubbling anxiously in his breathing apparatus. "No weapons activation detected, but their energy signatures indicate ready status." "Why aren't they firing?" demanded the Vrexian security commander, his crystalline form vibrating with confusion. "Their delegation was attacked on neutral ground after accepting our invitation. Military response is the only logical reaction." In the diplomatic quarter, Archivist Ileana Chen worked with frantic intensity. Her neural implant, linked to a hastily assembled network of alien information specialists, processed terabytes of security data. The Muth historian beside her manipulated holographic interfaces with the practiced ease of a being whose lifetime spanned millennia. There, Ileana highlighted a sequence of data patterns. Quantum entanglement signatures. The nanite release wasn't triggered locally. The activation signal came through a secure channel from the Vrexian diplomatic compound, finished the Muth historian, translucent appendages trembling. "This implicates a High Counselor." "Cassandra," Ileana confirmed, her implant correlating personnel locations with communication records. "We need to broadcast this immediately, before the faction he represents can prepare counter-narratives." The Muth's ancient form pulsed with hesitation patterns. "The evidence is compelling but not absolute. Broadcasting accusations against a High Counselor without conclave authorization is exactly what they expect us not to do," Ileana interrupted. "They're counting on protocol to give them time to establish their version of events. We can't let that happen." Meanwhile, in the Reconciliation's secure communication chamber, Commander Takashi received the update on Admiral Winter's condition. His face remained impassive as he transmitted the information to Earth's United Defense Council. "Admiral Winters has stabilized but remains critical," he reported. "The nanite attack has been confirmed as Vrexian military technology, deployed by Council member Xandrel. 3 diplomatic personnel dead, 2 more critical. 4 alien moderates also killed in the attack." The holographic projection of Earth's Defense Council showed faces grave with concern but not surprise. The eldest counselor, her dark skin bearing the distinctive scars of the original invasion, leaned forward. "The Nova Protocol authorization codes have been transmitted to all fleet vessels," she stated, awaiting Admiral Winter's final assessment before activation. Commander Takeshi nodded solemnly. The Admiral anticipated this scenario. Her final instruction before losing consciousness was to maintain current positions and await her recovery. "And if she doesn't recover?" asked another counselor. Takashi's expression hardened. "Then I am to implement Contingency Omega." All Vrexian military and governmental installations targeted simultaneously. No warning, no survivors. Across the 7 galaxies, human vessels maintained their silent vigil. Their weapons remained powered down, their communication channels open but silent. The message was clear to anyone with the wisdom to read it. Humanity had the capacity for terrible vengeance, but was choosing, for now, to wait. In thousands of alien information networks, an unauthorized broadcast began streaming simultaneously. Security footage, communication records, and equipment signatures that clearly implicated Counselor Xandril in the assassination attempt. The broadcast ended with a simple message in Galactic Standard: justice, not vengeance. Truth, not retaliation. The human way. The holographic debate in New Geneva continued well into the night. The attempted assassination of Admiral Winters had polarized Earth's unified government in ways not seen since the immediate aftermath of the alien invasion. The Nova Protocol represents our absolute last resort, insisted President Raman, her holographic form projected from the Luna colony. Activating it would destroy not just Vrexian military targets, but civilian infrastructure across 24 worlds. Billions of non-combatants. Billions who voted for leadership that tried to exterminate us twice now, interrupted General Santos, slamming her palm on the conference table. The scared veteran had lost her entire family in the Battle of Kilimanjaro. How many chances do we give them? Around the table, representatives from Earth's formerly independent nations watched the exchange with expressions ranging from grim determination to profound discomfort. The original alien attack had forced humanity to overcome centuries of division almost overnight, but the hard-won unity remained fragile when tested by decisions of this magnitude. "We've received updated medical reports," announced the intelligence director, his augmented eyes scanning encrypted transmissions. "Admiral Winters is expected to recover, though the nanite damage to her peripheral nervous system appears permanent." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the chamber. Winters wasn't just Earth's chief diplomat. She had become the living embodiment of humanity's approach to the Conclave. Scared but unbowed, determined yet measured. "Her last instruction stands," the director continued. "Maintain positions, broadcast evidence of the conspiracy, but take no military action unless directly attacked." Outside the secure government complex, the streets of New Geneva hummed with activity despite the late hour. Public information feeds displayed live updates from Nexus Station, while citizen gathering spots hosted intense discussions about humanity's future relationship with the broader galactic community. In Alexandria Square, a massive holographic display showed Ileana Chen's compiled evidence against Counselor Xandril. The gathered crowd, a mix of invasion veterans and younger citizens who'd grown up in its shadow, watched with expressions ranging from vindication to cautious hope. "We should just glass their worlds and be done with it," muttered an older man, the neural implant at his temple marking him as a veteran of the counter-invasion forces. "They wouldn't hesitate if positions were reversed." "That's exactly the point," countered a university student beside him. "We're not them. We're better than that." The exchange, happening in countless variations across Earth and its colonies, revealed the fundamental tensions within humanity's response to the Conclave. The veterans who remembered Earth's cities burning demanded security. The generation that followed sought something more. In the orbital sanctuary above what had once been Tokyo, Sister Maya Nakamura led an interfaith service that had become a tradition since the invasion. Representatives from Earth's religions, once divided by dogma and history, gathered in the zero-gravity chapel to pray for those lost in both the original attack and the recent assassination attempt. "We seek not the satisfaction of vengeance," intoned Rabbi Cohen, floating beside an imam, a Buddhist nun, and clerics from a dozen other traditions, "but the security of justice. We remember those taken from us," added Imam Farouk, "but we build for those who will follow." The service, broadcast to every human settlement from Earth to the outer colonies, represented something the Conclave found more alarming than any weapon: humanity's capacity to maintain ethical frameworks transcending base instincts for retaliation. Meanwhile, in her quarters on Nexus Station, archivist Ileana Chen found herself hosting an increasingly diverse group of alien information specialists. What had begun as a clandestine meeting with the Muth historian had expanded as word spread through diplomatic channels. "Your historical records show your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times," noted a photonic analyst, their light form dimming to indicate confusion. Nuclear weapons, climate destabilization, biological warfare, all deployed against your own kind. Yes, Eliana acknowledged. We came close to self-extinction more than once. Yet you emerged with this capacity for, what is your term? Forgiveness. The light being fluctuated with conceptual difficulty. Not just forgiveness, Eliana clarified. Reconciliation. The understanding that lasting peace requires justice, acknowledgement, and then movement forward together. The assembled aliens emitted various signals of confusion, electromagnetic pulses, pheromonal releases, gravitational distortions, as they struggled with a concept so foreign to their evolutionary experience. This is why the Conclave fears you more than your weapons, the Muth historian finally translated. You possess something we cannot predict or counter. Humanity? Eliana asked. Hope, replied the ancient being. As the final voting procedures began in the quantum-entangled chambers, tension manifested in species-specific ways. Atmospheric beings generated storm patterns so intense that containment fields glowed with the strain. Silicon-based representatives vibrated at frequencies that would have shattered unprotected observers. Entities composed primarily of information requested auxiliary processing capacity to run increasingly complex predictive models. The ancient protocols of the final deliberation chamber had not been invoked in 7 millennia, not since the photonic uprising that nearly fractured the conclave. The voting process itself reflected the delicate balance of power among thousands of diverse species, a complex weighted system accounting for population, territorial holdings, technological development, and historical contribution to conclave stability. In a secured observation area, Admiral Winters, now recovered enough to stand with the assistance of a medical exoskeleton, watched the proceedings alongside the human delegation. The nanite attack had left her with limited mobility on her right side, adding fresh scars to those she already carried from the original invasion. Preliminary votes are trending toward approval, Dr. Mehta whispered, his neural implant analyzing the visible voting patterns. But significant blocks remain undecided. The Phyrexian Coalition? Winters asked, her voice steady despite her injuries. Diminished but still substantial. Xandril's exposure damaged their position, but fear is a powerful motivator. Many species remain convinced that acceptance of human integration is merely delaying inevitable conflict. The eldest Muth approached the center of the chamber, its massive form drawing immediate attention from all representatives. The ancient being's decision to break traditional neutrality had sent shockwaves through conclave politics. For millions of years, the Muth had observed and recorded, but rarely intervened directly. Its mental projection, broadcast simultaneously to all species through translation matrices calibrated to their specific cognitive frameworks, carried the weight of 12 million years of accumulated wisdom. We have conducted a comprehensive meta-analysis of all recorded first contact scenarios in our archives, the ancient being communicated. In 27,000 documented instances of interspecies contact, we find no precedent for humanity's response pattern. The chamber fell into profound silence as the Muth shared its analysis directly through the quantum network, species after species reacting with stunned disbelief at what the ancient observer had discovered. The human capacity for both devastating warfare and genuine reconciliation exceeds all previously established parameters, the eldest Muth continued. Their history contains multiple instances of catastrophic conflict between their own factions, followed by reconstruction efforts benefiting former enemies. This pattern, what humans term forgiveness with accountability, has no analog in conclave evolutionary psychology. The ancient being's translucent appendages gestured toward the human delegation. We face an inflection point in conclave history. The species before us possesses the military capability to destroy our civilization. This is beyond reasonable dispute based on their technological advancement curve and distributed fleet positioning. Yet they instead offer integration and mutual development. Xandril, the disgraced Phyrexian counselor, stripped of position but permitted to speak as representative of the opposition, advanced to the response platform. The Muth's analysis overlooks the most obvious explanation. His crystalline form pulsed aggressively. The humans offered is tactical deception. Their behavioral unpredictability is not evidence of superior ethical frameworks, but of fundamental untrustworthiness. Admiral Winter's face remained impassive, though those closest to her could see the slight tension in her jaw. The Vrexian was playing on the Conclave's deepest fears, that human psychology was fundamentally incompatible with galactic stability. The Unified Intelligence Director, whose gelatinous form had absorbed and processed more data on human behavior than any other being in the Conclave, rose unexpectedly to address the chamber. Our most sophisticated predictive models initially supported Counselor Xandrel's assessment, the Director's translator rendered. However, subsequent analysis of human actions following the assassination attempt has forced a reassessment. Holographic displays throughout the chamber showed human vessels maintaining position throughout conclave space, weapon systems powered down despite having justification for retaliation. The humans had tactical advantage, provocation, and justification. The Intelligence Director concluded, their restraint cannot be explained by any strategic model except the one they themselves have stated. They genuinely prefer cooperation over conquest. As final votes began registering in the quantum matrix, the eldest Muth approached Admiral Winters privately. You must understand, it communicated directly, bypassing translation systems. This decision remains contentious. Many will continue to fear what humanity represents. Fear is natural when facing the unknown, Winters replied. We've had plenty of practice with it ourselves. The Grand Induction Hall of Nexus Station had been transformed for the ceremony marking humanity's official membership in the Conclave. Holographic displays showed simultaneous celebrations across 7 galaxies, a rare moment of genuine unity among thousands of species. Admiral Helena Winters, now Earth's first official conclave representative, stood at the center of the ancient ceremonial platform. Her dress uniform bore the insignia of both Earth and the conclave. The first time in history, a species had been permitted to maintain dual loyalty symbols during the induction ritual. The medical exoskeleton supporting her right side had been redesigned for the occasion, its utilitarian function enhanced with elegant form. Like humanity itself, it represented adaptation of adversity into strength. 5 years ago, I stood before you with scars from your weapons and terms for your consideration. Winters addressed the assembled representatives, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. Today I stand before you with new scars and new purpose. We came seeking justice, not vengeance. The difference between these concepts was once incomprehensible to you. Now you understand. Around the chamber, species that had once voted for Earth's destruction now bowed, dimmed, or emitted respectful pheromones, each according to their biological nature. The change had been extraordinary. In just 5 years, humanity had transformed conclave governance, human diplomatic approaches, concepts like compromise, loyal opposition, and separation of powers, had revolutionized political structures that had remained static for millennia. Human creativity accelerated technological development, while human adaptability helped solve ecological crises across multiple worlds. Most profoundly, the human concept of constructive dissent, the idea that opposition could strengthen rather than threaten governance, had begun spreading through conclave political structures, creating dynamism in a system that had calcified over eons. From the gallery, archivist Ileana Chen watched with quiet pride. Her work documenting the integration process had made her a celebrity throughout conclave space, her historical analyses providing context for the unprecedented changes rippling through galactic civilization. Beside her stood the eldest Muth, its translucent form bearing a new ring, the mark of having witnessed a truly historic epoch. In all my existence, the ancient being communicated privately to Ileana. I have never observed such rapid adaptation of multiple civilizations to new paradigms. The conclave was dying, becoming rigid, fearful, stagnant. Humanity has revitalized systems that were failing. The ceremony reached its culmination as the 7 high representatives, including, for the first time, a human member, activated the quantum entanglement matrix that formally recorded humanity's accession to full voting rights. As Admiral Winters completed the ritual phrases, emergency communications suddenly activated throughout the station. Displays shifted to show long-range sensor data from the galactic rim. Massive objects moving at impossible speeds toward conclave space. Unknown technology, reported the Unified Intelligence Director, gelatinous form pulsing with alarm patterns. Origin beyond charted space. Vessel configuration matches no known design parameters. The chamber erupted in panicked communications as representatives received simultaneous updates from their homeworlds. Whatever approached was massive, technologically superior, and completely unknown. A nightmare scenario for a civilization that prized predictability and stability. The 7 high representatives looked to each other in growing alarm. Ancient protocols for external threats suddenly inadequate before this unknown challenge. Then, unexpectedly, Admiral Winters stepped forward. "The Conclave has faced external threats before," she stated calmly. "But always as individual species loosely aligned. We now have the advantage of genuine unity, forged through our recent challenges." She activated her neural implant, connecting directly with Earth's defense systems. Within moments, holographic displays showed human vessels throughout the 7 galaxies shifting configuration, not to retreat, but to form defensive screens around key conclave worlds. "Earth Defense Force is deploying to protection stations," Winters announced. "All vessels are positioning to defend conclave population centers, not just human interests." The significance wasn't lost on the assembled representatives. The humans, who had every historical reason to abandon the civilization that had once tried to destroy them, were instead positioning themselves as its first line of defense. "We'll defend you," Winters stated simply, "not because we've forgotten, but because we've forgiven." That is Terra's true strength. As the unknown vessels continued their approach, the Conclave found itself in an unprecedented position, being protected by the very species it had once feared above all others. In that moment, the final transformation was complete. Terra's vengeance, the great fear that had haunted the Conclave for decades, had never materialized. Instead, humanity had brought something far more disruptive. Forgiveness with accountability, strength without domination, diversity without discord. The true revenge, in the end, was making the Conclave better than it had been before.